really happy to welcome Cesar Garcia. He's a Director of Client Services for Early Start in Children. Niaisha Gonzalez, she's our Early Start Manager. And Rosalba Ortega, she is also our Early Start Manager. Next slide.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be part of this webinar series. Anytime we have an opportunity to engage with our community, it's something that we welcome and that we enjoy doing. We realize that something that's very important to us is making sure that we collaborate with everyone in our community, and we maintain, open lines of communication, and that will allow us to be, really good partners. So as Sandy was saying, my name is Cesar Garcia. I am the Director of Client Services for Early Start and Children's Services here at Westside Regional Center. We realize here at Westside Regional Center that this pandemic that we're facing right now has really affected everyone in our community in different ways. But more so for those families that were already experiencing difficult situations, it has made those situations a lot more challenging and more difficult. I want everyone in the community to know that Westside Regional Center is here to support you in whatever way that we can. Even though our service coordinators and most of our staff really is working remotely, we are still working, and we are here to do what we can to support you throughout this pandemic. We'd like to make sure that we keep in communication. As I said earlier, we want to make sure that we know what the needs are that our community is facing. So our service coordinators have reached out to you and will continue to reach out to you to make sure that we can help in whatever way that we can while you guys are in the Early Start program and beyond. So far, we continue to try and support families throughout their state in the Early Start program. As I mentioned, we are maintaining communication, calling families, providing you with as much information as possible, setting up opportunities for community engagement via Zoom, which is our primary platform right now. Being able to connect with families through the internet, our website, social media. We want to keep families informed. We want to let you know that we are still providing services as best we can in this new era of distance therapy and distance learning. So a lot of our therapists, our vendors, I want to thank them as well, because they've really have stepped up. They've adapted, like all of us have, to try and continue to provide as much support to our families and children as possible. We are working with as many community partners as possible, in particular school districts, the district SELPAs, and any other resources that we've in the past have worked with, to make sure that, we are collaborating and doing as much as we can to try and support families. And that is our priority. Our service coordinators, I believe, are going, above and beyond right now, because they themselves have been affected by this pandemic. They're working from home, as I mentioned, but at the same time, they are having to support their own family. They've got children who are doing distance learning, or maybe they're supporting other members of their family at home. So, they're also trying to, adapt to current situations as they are. So again, I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for being part of this. I want you all to know that Westside is here for you, and we will continue to be here for you and do what we can to support you. So at this point, I'd like to open it up to see if there's any specific questions or comments that anyone may have right now before we move forward with this webinar series.
So once again, everyone can submit any questions on the Q&A box, either on the bottom of your screen, or if it's on your phone, it's somewhere above your screen.
Okay. So I guess we may have questions along the way, and we will definitely, be able to answer questions a little bit later as well. So for now, we're going to go ahead and move forward. I'd like to introduce our next panelist. She is Rosalba Ortega, one of our Early Start Program managers, who will be starting off our presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Cesar, and thank you to everyone for joining us for today's presentation. I'm Rosalba Ortega, and I'm the Early Start Program Manager for Unit 60. So we hope today's presentation will help you understand the Early Start Program and the transition process, that you will also be able to ask questions and get the answers that you need, and that after today's presentation, you will be able to make an informed decision about your family's future. Early Start Program Idea Part C. So our program, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is a law that makes available a free and appropriate public education to eligible children with disabilities throughout the nation. IDEA also governs how the state and public agencies provide early intervention services, special education services, and related services to children, infants, and toddlers with disabilities. The Early Start Program is California's early intervention system under Part C of IDEA. So our program, Early Start, seeks to promote and enhance a coordinated family-focused service for infants and toddlers from birth to age 3. How a child may qualify for our program: they would have to have a 33% delay in at least one area of development. So that would be developmental delay. And the 5 areas of development are adaptive, cognitive, communication, motor, and social emotional development. Another area would be if a child had a disability such as autism, or if they had an established risk, which would be a syndrome such as Down syndrome or Prader-Willi. And another option would also be high risk, which would be for premature babies, children that have failure to thrive, or another option would also be if they had a traumatic brain injury. There's a whole list, of course, on our website that you can also look at. So you can see all of the different developmental delays, disabilities, established risks for a child to be able to qualify for Early Start. So our program, Early Start, it's designed to provide a system of referrals and assessments. The results of each assessment, we look at each child individually. We make sure that we look at the areas of development where they're delayed, and based on that, we'll make recommendations for the services that are recommended for that child. We also support infants and toddlers and their families within their community. And our program is also family focused by keeping the families always informed of the services for their child. Your service coordinator is great about reaching out to you, talking about any new services that may be recommended for your child. And we also make sure that we support families and include them as collaborative decision makers. So we make sure to discuss any recommendations with you, and you're a part of the team. So we do need your consent to go forward with those services. Early intervention services, what exactly are they and how do they look like, you may be wondering. So our services are designed to meet, like I explained before, the needs of each infant and toddler, and also the needs of the family. So we look at what the recommendations are, and we also try to provide those services in the natural environment. Typically, the services would take place in the home, or also it could take place in a childcare setting if that would be an option. So a natural environment, that's what we always aim for. However, due to the current pandemic, all services are being provided via telehealth. And we'll further down, I'll also discuss other options of how services are also provided. Early intervention, we also include the transition to appropriate services after the age of 3. So later on, my counterpart, Niaisha Gonzalez, will provide more information about the transition process after the age of 3. And here's a list of some of the services that are available to your child or that may be available. There's a second page to this. So if you look at the options that are in bold, those are our typical services that would be provided in Early Start, which are occupational therapy, physical therapy, service coordination, special instruction, which can be the center-based program or infant STEM, and speech and language services. And you can also find this information on our website if you go. You'll go ahead and find the service and support handout that's available for families. And it goes more into detail about each service. It describes every service, such as occupational therapy. It lets you know that they would be working on fine motor skills. So please go ahead and take a look if you get a chance, go on our website. Thank you. And how are services delivered? So going back to that, we did talk a little bit about it. Typically, they take place in the home or in a childcare setting, but at times there's also our center-based programs that we recommend. And sometimes services are also provided in a clinic setting. Certain children do require specialized equipment, so it's a better setting to be able to go into a clinic, and also, of course, other natural settings. And what is the role of the parent in Early Start? You are the person that plays the most important part in your child's early intervention experience. So families are always a part of the evaluation and assessment process. Whenever a developmental evaluation, a speech assessment, or a consultation is taking place, you are a part of that. And you are the main person that's providing information to the therapist so they can know what your child's needs are. The family also participates in the Individualized Family Service Plan, which a lot of the times we refer to it as the IFSP. Parents are always, they maintain an open communication with their service coordinator regarding services in the IFSP. So if anything comes up, if the services are not working out for your child, definitely talk to your service coordinator about that. Or if you want to meet again for another IFSP, even though one isn't due, you have the right to also request an additional IFSP meeting. And it is essential that parents or guardians participate in therapy sessions. I like how they put this one in bold, just because it is the most important role that you play. Definitely, we always encourage families to take part in the therapy sessions, so that way, when the therapist leaves after providing that one clinical hour session, you can continue to work with your child throughout the week with the strategies and the feedback that you receive from your therapist. When you first start with our program, typically your service coordinator will let you know that families must explore services through insurance. So the first 6 months, we'll go ahead and put the services in place, but during that time, families are expected to reach out to their insurance provider to see if occupational therapy, physical therapy, or speech therapy, if these are services that are covered. If they're not covered, all that we would require is just for the family to be able to provide us with a denial letter, and that way we can continue to fund for the service if it's still recommended. And what is Individualized Family Service Plan? It's basically the regional center's contract with the family. It's the foundation of the services that are family-centered. So in the IFSP, your service coordinator will meet with you, and they will talk about your concerns and priorities for your child's strengths, and also they'll discuss medical, developmental history, and they'll inquire about how our service is going with the therapies that we've already started. You decide who gets to be a part of the IFSP too. So if you want to invite a teacher that's currently working with your child, or if you want to invite the caregiver, if you have grandma providing support, you're welcome to invite anyone to the IFSP. And the IFSP will be fully explained to you. You'll receive a copy of it. Service coordinators have 30 days to complete the IFSP to write it up, and then they'll mail it out to you. If you require translation, please let your service coordinators also know so that we can go ahead and have the document translated to your primary language. And that's my portion of today's presentation. Moving forward, you will be talking about the transition process with my counterpart, Niaisha Gonzalez. So please welcome Niaisha.
And I am an Early Start Program Manager at Westside Regional Center. And we are now going to talk about the second part, the transition process. So what is that? What is the transition process? As we all know, and we've all been a part of recently, the many transitions that COVID has introduced into our lives. So an Early Start, there is a transition process also because our services end when our children turn 3. And so the process of moving from Early Start and beginning new options is what we call transition. This process or introduction of the transition process can start as early as your child's 2nd birthday at that IFSP meeting. Your service coordinator may start introducing what the next steps will look like for your child. And at 30 months is when we start that transition process. And so next it talks about transition services. And what are those? Those services are what your service coordinator provides to your in transitioning your child out of the Early Start program into the next phases in life. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. And as I mentioned, our families transition out of the Early Start program when they turn 3. And the reason for that is the school districts then become responsible for services that Early Start was then providing. So what are your transition options? So today we're going to talk in depth about number 1 and number 2 on the slide, which is the first option is regional center. If your child qualifies for regional center services after the age of 3, they can transition to our children's unit. The second option we're going to talk about today is special education under the school district. And we'll talk about the law that oversees it, IDEA Part B, and what it looks like transitioning to the school district. Or you may explore option 1, option 2, or option 3, which is transitioning your child into maybe you were thinking of private school or a Head Start program or Mommy and Me or some other program or that's unique and perfect for your child. So those are our transition options that we have available. So we're going to start going, we're going to go a little more in depth about number 1 and 2. And this is kind of a handy transition worksheet for you that shows the transition process through the school district on the right side, and then the transition process through the regional center on the left side. We also have the slide available in Spanish, and it'll be available to you guys also, and I believe it's on our website. So we're going to get started with talking about the transition process on the right side of that flow chart, which is the school district. So special education under the school district. So the law that covers special education under the school district is called IDEA Part B. And that law covers children from ages 3 to 22 who qualify for special education services through the school district. This means if your child qualifies for these services, they're eligible to receive these services according to their specific needs based on their eligibility criteria. And later on in this presentation, we'll show you a list of the school district eligibility criteria. We won't go in depth with those because it is the school district, and so they were not qualified to speak on behalf of the school district, but we can share their information with you. And then along with that, we'll just touch briefly on the IEP, which is the Individualized Education Program. And this is the legal document similar to the IFSP, but in school district, which allows the school district to provide your child's services. So if your child does qualify for services through the school district, they'll be provided to your family at no cost. One of the major differences between the school district and the regional center is the model that we fall under. The school district falls under an educational model, so their services are based on what the child needs to excel in education. And the regional center, similar to your private insurance, is under a medical model. And so what this means is, one of the things while you're in regional center is, you have to explore your private insurance and put it into place, and there cannot be funding for both regional center and private insurance because we fall under that same medical model. When your child becomes 3, as in the school district, because the school is an educational model, you can access both your private insurance and the school district services your child qualifies for. So how do you even get started with the school district? So when your child is around 30 months is when you're going to have a transition conference. And we're going to go over that in a flow chart. And from that transition conference, your service coordinator is going to let you know, under IDEA Part B, the law that covers special education, it says that every child at a regional center is considered potentially eligible for local educational services through their local school district. This means by law, every child must be identified and referred to the school district when they're 32 months before they're 33 months. We don't need parental consent to refer your child to the school district. If you have not given us consent, the only thing that will be on the notification referral we're required by law to share with the school district is your child's name, date of birth, and your contact information so that the school district can contact you. And please note that at any time, if you choose not to give consent to refer to the school district, you can change your mind. Even as your child turns 3, you can go down to your local school district or call them in the times that we are living now and let them know that you are interested in special education services. And under IDEA Part B, it says that every child has to have a transition meeting. Generally, our transition meetings take place between 30 and 32 months. But we can refer them as early as 28 months. Normally, we hold them at 32 months because that's when we can do a referral to the school district and also have the school district participate in our meeting if they're available. So what happens once Regional Center gives this referral notification over to the school district? So once Regional Center gives this notification, the school district then has 15 days to send the family an assessment plan. And then once you receive that assessment plan, you want to sign it and send it back right away or email it back to your school district right away, because then it starts a timeline and the school district then has 60 days to assess and then hold the IEP meeting, which determines the educational services your child qualifies for. And please remember when your IEP is scheduled that you can also have anyone attend that meeting with you. You would just have to invite them. So you can have an advocate or your service coordinator or a therapist attend that meeting. So this is the referral form that we were talking about. This is an internal document, so it's just shared with the school district. So if you had consented to a referral to the school district, what we would include on here is the current services that your child is receiving. And if you've given us permission to share a referral packet, then we would also include that with this referral notification to the school district. So this is what your school district transition process looks like. So we'll go over it. So we'll start here, and we'll start on the far right. If you have chosen not to have a transition conference with the school district and you don't want a referral sent over to the school district, you haven't given us consent, what will then happen is when your child is 32 months, the regional center service coordinator will submit that referral notification to the school district, and then we'll be done. When your child turns 3, we'll talk about those with regional center. So if we go back up here, and you did give consent to submit a referral notification to your school district, but your school district wasn't available for whatever reason, so they weren't present at your transition conference. Then when your child turned 32 months, your service coordinator will submit that referral over to the school district. And then once the school district receives it, within that 15-day timeline, they'll send an assessment plan to your family, either mail or email. And just be sure when you receive it that you sign it and send it back right away. And if we go back up to the top, if the school district personnel was at your transition conference, which now takes place via Zoom or telephone conference, if they were there, then because we're not meeting in person, so we can't get a physical signature. If your child is 32 months, the service coordinator will send that referral to the district, and they will then email you or mail you that assessment plan. Or if your child is younger than 32 months, when your child turns 32 months, then that assessment plan will be sent, the referral will be made to the school district, and the assessment plan then sent to your family from the district. So what happens if you've had you signed your assessment plan, you had your assessments with the school district, you had your IEP, and at your IEP, your child was found eligible for services under the school district, under IDEA Part B. This list right here is the 13 qualifying disabilities, which opens the door for your child to receive services through the school district. And I'm not going to go over them because they are school district qualifying. They're not regional center, and I'll talk a little bit about the regional center ones, but just wanted to give that to you guys in case you're interested. So if your child is found eligible for special education services, you'll have your IEP will take place. They'll be developed with your input. So goals will be developed, services will be discussed, and placement will also be discussed. And if you're in agreement, you'll sign your IEP. When your child turns 3, your child will then receive their services through the district. You can also, if there's parts of the IEP that you agree with, you can sign off on those and get those started when your child turns 3 and continue to discuss the parts you don't agree with the school district. And then of course, if you don't agree with it, then you can let the district know that you're not in agreement, and then you can request an individual education assessment, an outside educational assessment. If your child is eligible for regional center services after 3, we do have educational support services that can help your family if you're not in agreement with the IEP. We are going to be having a webinar next week on the IEP. It's going to be in English and Spanish. The English one is going to take place on the 26th, and that's a Tuesday at 1 p.m. If you are interested in, they're going to talk about the transition process from early start to special education. They're going to give you more details about special education and services and what to expect at your first IEP meeting. So please sign up if you're interested in it. There'll also be one next week on Thursday, May 28th at 1 p.m. for in Spanish. So please sign up if you're interested in those. It's hosted by our educational support advocates. And this is their contact information here. This will all be shared with you, so don't worry about writing it down. So I touched on this a little bit already. So what if your child is not eligible for special education services? If you agree with it, then you can close out the IEP. Your child's not eligible. Just know that you can in the future as learning demands change and as your child grows, if you think your child qualifies for school district services sometime in the future, you can always revisit it with your child's home school. Or if you disagree with it, then you can also request a second opinion, an independent educational evaluation. And for those children that are eligible with Regional Center after 3, we do have educational advocates. On the previous slide, I mentioned Barbara and both Ron are available to assist our families. We also have, for those children that are not eligible for Regional Center services after 3, we have we have a family resource center that also can help our families with the process if they're not in agreement. And this is our Family Resource Center information. Again, you don't have to write it down. It will be available to you when the presentation is emailed out. So now we have talked about the school district. So we talked about the right side of the flow chart. And now we're going to talk about the left side of the flow chart. What is transition in Regional Center from early start to determining if your child qualifies to then transfer to our children's unit. So and this is just the slide also in Spanish. So our children's services are covered by the Lanterman Developmental Disabilities Act. And this is a very important piece of legislation that was created in 1969. And it basically says that in the state of California, under California law, people with developmental disabilities and their families have a right to get the services and supports that they need to live like people who don't have a disability. So what qualifies a child to be eligible under the Lanterman Act? So we have 5 qualifying diagnoses, and they are intellectual disability, autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, or a condition similar to an intellectual disability. Just keep in mind when your child is going through the assessment process that they're looking for a developmental disability that's expected to continue throughout their life. It has significant impact, causes significant limitations on their life. So in making this determination, we start at 30 months. When your child is 30 months, sometime 30 months or after, they'll have an exiting developmental evaluation. It'll be their last evaluation that they have at Regional Center. So here we are, this is our flow chart, and they'll have their last evaluation if you choose. So if you choose not to have that exiting developmental evaluation, you say thank you, but no thank you, then what will happen is your child's case will close when they turn 3, and then it will be archived. But if you say, yes, we do want our exiting developmental evaluation, once that evaluation takes place, then either it's reviewed by our team and they say we can make a determination off of that evaluation that either your child is not eligible for regional center services after 3, and the case would then close, or your child is eligible for regional center services after 3, and your child's case would transfer to the children's unit when they turn 3. So if we go back up, and when that developmental evaluation is reviewed, and the reviewers, our team, decides actually we need more information, then they will request a psychological assessment. So then that psychological assessment would take place. And once the assessment takes place and we continue to do our assessments, it's all done through telehealth. But once that assessment takes place, then it will be reviewed by our team, and they will make a determination if your child qualifies under Lanterman services after age of 3. If your child does not qualify, then their case will be closed when they turn 3. And if they do, then your child's case will be transferred to our children's unit when they turn 3. So if your child is found eligible, what does that mean? So of course, because our early start program ends at 3, your child's early start case will then be transferred to a children's service coordinator. And so that children's service coordinator would meet with you to discuss services in the children's unit, and also to develop what's called an IPP, an individualized program plan, which is different than the IFSP, yet the same. It is a legal document, but it's, instead of the IFSP, which is the individualized family service plan, the IPP focuses on the individual as opposed to the family in the IFSP. And then your children's service coordinator would also talk to you about services that are available in the children's unit. On our website, we do have information on services and supports from age 3 to 10. So if you're interested in finding out more detail about that, please visit our website. So what if your child is not eligible for regional center services after 3? If you're in agreement, then we would close your child's case out and archive it. Or if you were not in agreement, then you would want to let your service coordinator know. Your service coordinator will send you the letter, and along with it will contain an appeals packet. And so if you're not in agreement and that your child was found not eligible, then you can appeal it. We do have a video on our website and also in our YouTube that talks about the appeals process, if you would like to check that out. Then you also can talk to your service coordinator too. So the next 2 slides is a couple of helpful links about Westside Region, different organizations, all within the same realm of Westside Regional Center. We have our link up here. You don't have to write it down. These will be made available to you. We talked about our Family Resource Center that can also help you with school district, IEPs and assessment. They're also linked here. Another important one is Early Start, which Rosalba mentioned earlier, DDS and IDEA Part C. It can all be found at this link. And then the IDEA, the specific law, can be found at this link. If you wanted more information about the school districts, the CDE, which oversees the school districts, the California Department of Education. Their website link is here. And then another very helpful resource to our families, which is at no cost, is WestEd. They're an organization that provides a wealth of resources, information, classes about Early Start, there's chat rooms where you can speak with other parents or even providers, therapists. It's a very helpful Early Start resource for our families. So if you're interested in just learning more, seeing more what's out there, please visit there. And again, that'll be made available to you. So at this time, this concludes the transition portion of the presentation. information is here on the left, and then Rosalba, the other program manager who presented earlier, her information is also on the right here. We're now going to hand it over to Sandy. We'll have a time, I think there's a post test, and then we'll also be available to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you everyone. We're going to move over to the next slide. Okay, so as a reminder, please type your questions into the Q&A box on your control panel. We do have one question, and the question is, I'm not sure if I understood it well. After age 3, could my daughter get services both the regional center and the school district? When she qualifies, she is already diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder.
Yes, good question. Yes, your daughter can receive services through the school district and the regional center if she's qualified through the school district. They have their separate testing, and through regional center, we have our separate testing. So if your child qualified, the regional center services after 3 are different than the early start services, since the early start services end when a child turns 3. The services that are available in the regional center after 3 are respite, ABA, depending on the child's age as they get older, social skills. And then those early start services your child was receiving in the early start program. If your child qualified through the school district, then your child, whatever services your child qualified through the school district, they could receive through the school district.
Okay, and then the same participant had a follow-up. She wrote, if my child has the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, does it mean 100% qualification for services, or does it depend on her level? We still don't know if she is high functioning or severe.
Very good question. It would depend on the level. So what we would ask is that if you have an independent report from a psychologist she's already seen, if you can provide it to your service coordinator. And if you don't, our psychologists on staff can do a psychological assessment to make that determination to see the impact. If it's substantial. So what I would say is if you have a report, please share it with your service coordinator. And if not, then for regional center purposes, our psychologists will do their own testing to make that determination.
Thank you. We also have another question. Due to COVID, what's happening with the timelines at the district and the regional centers?
Very good questions. Due to COVID, for regional center purposes, we have maintained our timelines. Ever since COVID hit, we quickly as possible went into remote mode, but have continued to meet our timelines. So we continue to do our referrals at 32 months, our transition conferences, our every 6 month IFSP meetings. I can't really speak for the school district. It's been a little bit different than the regional center or Westside Regional Center. The school districts, what I would say is speak with your service coordinator. Make sure you're collaborating with them, regardless of what part of the process you are. If you haven't heard from your district to schedule assessments, follow up with your coordinator if you can't get a hold of the district. If your IEP was canceled for whatever reason, follow up with your school district case manager that you should have for your IEP team. And if you can't get a hold of them, contact your service coordinator and we'll reach out to the district also. So for regional center purposes, we've been meeting our timelines and keeping our timelines. We just don't get to see everyone in person anymore because of the social distancing. But for your school district, please work closely with your service coordinator. We keep them updated as we know what's going on with specific districts, and so they're best suited to help you.
Perfect. And there was a question, but it was answered in the chat box, but I just want to say out loud. Yes, we will be emailing everyone a copy of this presentation and also the recording. So if you know anyone that was not able to attend this webinar, but you feel like, you know what, I really want to share it, whether it be, you know, someone in your family or a friend that you've met in a support group, we want to let you know that we will be emailing directly using the email that you provide at the registration. This video will be available on our website as well as our YouTube channel. So if you go on YouTube and you search for Westside Regional Center, you're going to see a lot of videos that we posted up, some concerning COVID-19 and others just about, you know, a regional center, the appeal process and stuff like that. Do we have any more questions from anyone in the audience before we conclude this webinar? If you can just please enter it into the Q&A box. Okay, so it seems that we have no more questions. So we just want to thank everyone, our panelists and the audience members. Thank you for participating in our webinar. We hope that we'll see you again next week on Tuesday and Thursday for our early start to preschool presentation. If you have any other questions about special education services, we do have our education advocacy specialist who will be answering any questions that we have in regards to the IEP, and that we hope we have a really healthy and blessed day today. So thank you, everyone.